morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, November 23rd, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by Steve Lorenz and Isaiah Holt from Wolverine 24/7, also joined by Steve Helwagen from here from Bucknuts. Good morning, gentlemen. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. First question, let's go to the Michigan guys first. Steve Lorenz, we'll start with you. Do you feel like, speaking for the Michigan point of view, the Michigan fan base in general, do you think there is hate, respect, or both for Ohio State?
I think it's both. Probably more on the hate side. I think, here's what I think. I think Harbaugh's reinvigorated the fan base, I think, to an extent where they're not necessarily as beaten down, maybe as they've been the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, granted, again, they lost last year as well, but, I think Harbaugh's kind of reinvigorated the fan base to an extent where, I think there's confidence that he'll get Michigan back to a level where this will be a competitive game year in and year out. So I think you've seen more of that hate style, feeling maybe than you did under, maybe the latter end of Rodriguez into the Hoke era. So, I'd still go with hate. I think there's always, at least between the rational fans, I think there's always sort of that respect. I think a lot of people look at this as the most enjoyable week of the year. So, I think it's always a combination of both, but I do think that hate has ramped up a little bit with Harbaugh back in charge.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird mix of respect and hate. That's why I wanted to ask you guys. Isaiah, your take is, speaking from a Michigan point of view, do Michigan fans hate Ohio State fans or hate the Ohio State football team, respect it, or both?
I also concur with Steve. I do think it's a bit of both. However, I think when it comes to the fans, I don't think that Michigan fans have any respect for the Ohio State fans, to be honest. I think that they look at them kind of the same way as they look at Michigan State fans, but with a little bit, just a sliver of begrudging respect, considering that they know that Ohio State's a long-term successful program. As far as the football team, fans towards the football team, I think fans also have begrudging respect for Ohio State. There's obviously not going to be very much of this Ohio State sucks type sentiment, considering that obviously in the last 16 years or so, that hasn't really been the case at all as far as between the two teams, the rivalry being pretty lopsided recently. So I'd say that fans definitely hate Ohio State, hence the little chant, "Oh, how I hate Ohio State." But there's definitely an element of respect there. I have to say, depending on who you're asking, it's one will go to one side more than the other.
Steve Helwagen, you've seen this game more than any of us on this show, at least on the call here. What's your take from Ohio State's perspective? Do you think Ohio State, do they have respect for Michigan's football team? Do they hate Michigan's football team, or do you think it's a little bit of both?
Well, you're right. The first one I ever attended was 1986 when Jim Harbaugh guaranteed the victory and delivered on it, and it was 20 years ago today, exactly, 1986. 30. Well, I'm talking about the 96 game. Was 20 years ago today when they spoiled Ohio State's undefeated season and national championship hopes. The Buckeyes still went on and won the Rose Bowl that year, Arizona State, but 13-9 they lost to Michigan. So, you fast forward the last 15 years, Ohio State's dominated 13-2, and I think that a lot of that respect eroded during the Rich Rod and somewhat the Hoke era, and I think that it's come back with Harbaugh, back-to-back 10-win seasons for them, so they are back on the front page of college football again, and I think that you have to respect their football, and that hatred is as deep and abiding as it's probably ever been, because Jim Harbaugh, for Ohio State fans, is a very easy person to dislike, going back to 1986, and even in 85. He beat him in 85 as well, so I think that you look at it and you just say, he's Darth Vader. He's a very easy person to dislike for Ohio State fans, and I think that the hatred is very strong. The respect is coming back, and that's kind of how I view it.
I want to get an update on Michigan's quarterback situation from Steve Lorenz and Isaiah. Steve Lorenz, we'll start with you again. What are you hearing about whether Wilton Speight might or might not play? Just what can you fill us in on Michigan's quarterback situation?
Sure. So obviously you guys know Harbaugh's never going to really go public with too much, but I know Isaiah was at the press conference yesterday. Amara Darboh confirmed that Speight practiced yesterday. My gut instinct the whole time is I think that he's at least going to be the guy to start the game. Speight will. I just feel like the collarbone stuff I think was a little overblown. Definitely doesn't have a broken collarbone. There's really been no super specification on what his injury is, but I don't think it's as serious as what was publicly reported last week. I expect him to give it a go. And then if he's unable to go, obviously if he does come out to start, Ohio State's going to do everything in their power to attack early and maybe try to knock him back out of the game. So, if he lasts the whole game, we'll see. Otherwise, yeah, it'll be John O'Korn again. And, if it is John O'Korn, I think Michigan's game plan better be a little bit different than it was against Indiana last week. So, again, this is my gut instinct. I think, I see Wilton playing, and, whether he makes it through the whole game or not, that'll maybe be the big question if it happens. So.
Isaiah, same question for you, but I want to add this. I mean, if John O'Korn didn't look good last week, but then again, we all know in the state of Michigan last week, it was tough to throw the football. Ohio State couldn't throw the football. How much do we really know about John O'Korn, and do you agree that Wilton Speight's probably going to play this week?
Addressing the Wilton Speight part, what Amara said to me in a very small select few in the media at that point, that was jiving with what we had heard over in 24/7 that he was going to be practicing this week and that he had practiced and everything. So yeah, I would expect him to give it a go. I know that it's not necessarily his call particularly, but if he has a good enough week in practice where he can go out there and move without showing too much pain in that non-throwing shoulder, which is where it seems that the injury is, then there's no reason that he won't be the guy. As far as John O'Korn, I will say I was honestly a bit surprised with the way that he kind of came out and just looked just objectively not good in that in pretty much most of that game. He came out and looked a lot better in the second half, really set up by that 30-yard scramble, but he just really didn't connect as well as what we have heard. Basically, the reports out of practice since he came to Michigan last year was that if he was eligible last year, he would have been the starter at really any given point in time in the season. So that never really came to fruition on the field. And yes, the weather was pretty brutal. It was a lot of wind gusts ranging from 20 to 40 miles an hour. So it wasn't exactly an ideal place to throw the ball, but a lot of the times it wasn't that made it look like he was struggling. It was he would have happy feet when he really didn't need to have happy feet. Felt like the pocket was collapsing. He'd start moving even when it wasn't. A couple times he just missed wide open receivers. I know there was one where he threw to Jake Butt and it was just nowhere in his vicinity. J.Hugh Chesson was down near the end zone, and when he rolled out of the pocket and no one even close to him, and he just threw it so far off target, low and everything. And that's the kind of throw you're going to have to make. So I don't think we really necessarily know about John O'Korn. That very well could have just been jitters from the fact that he hadn't played meaningful minutes in 2 years. So if he does get the go in Columbus, I really don't know what to expect, because he very well could come out and play a lot better. He certainly played very well in his freshman year at Houston, and regressed a little bit his sophomore year, but by all accounts, he's been a gamer in practice and has really shown quite a bit.
Before I kick it to Steve Helwagen, Steve Lorenz, how did this get screwed up? Was it just one site that reported that he had a broken collarbone, and then they went back on it? Like, how did something like this get misreported? Because that's a big deal, saying he has a broken collarbone, and he obviously does not.
That's a great question. I think there was some erroneous information. Here's the thing, Dave. You go back to the game against Iowa. They show the trainers working on him on the sidelines. Where they're pressing him and where he's reacting to pain was nowhere near his collarbone to begin with. That's where I thought the initial reports were kind of weird anyway. So, yeah, I mean, you know how it works now. I mean, you got a piece of information, somebody is standing behind it, they're going to go with it, and nowadays everyone wants to jump on it and report that as what they think it is based off of one report. That is really where it stemmed too, you know, and so there's that desire to get it right or be the first one to be out there with it, without maybe necessarily checking. You know, I know there were some within the Speight clan will say that were kind of dumbfounded at the report that because it's just not the case that he broke his collarbone. So, yeah, I mean, it was a very, I don't want to say it was irresponsible, but it's, you know, it almost is though. I mean, it's because it was very inaccurate. I mean, it's a shoulder situation of some kind, not a broken collarbone. I mean, here's the thing. Speight broke his collarbone in high school. And so, you know, he's a guy that he knows what it's like when his collarbone gets broken, you know, so you would have been able to tell, and I think there'd have been some more concrete information out there on that. But no, it's not a broken collarbone, and people want to run with it once it goes live.
Yeah, I saw him warming up before the game last week. You couldn't throw a football if you have a broken collarbone. So, okay, at least we got to the bottom of that. Thank you, gentlemen. Steve Helwagen, let's talk about the game itself. What advantage do you think the Buckeyes will have over the Wolverines in this game?
Oh, man, you're asking me a tough question. I sat down yesterday and I looked at every position group and the coaches and special teams and everything, and I came up with 5 units that favored Ohio State, one where they had a slight edge, and one where I considered it a push, and that was the offensive line. I think the offensive lines are very comparable. And then for Michigan, I had 4 where they had an edge, and 1 where they had a slight edge, and obviously 1 where they were dead even, the offensive line. So Ohio State, in terms of the coaches and the personnel and everything, had the very slightest of edges. And, you know, then you look at some intangibles. I think you got to count the quarterback twice. I mean, I think J.T. Barrett, you know, is greater than whoever shows up to play quarterback for Michigan. And Ohio State has the home field advantage. So, you know, if the line is 6 or 7 points, that makes sense to me. You know, does it mean Michigan can't win this game? Of course not. I mean, anything can happen in a 60-minute football game. I mean, did we think that Ohio State was going to win at Michigan State because Michigan State threw an interception on a 2-point conversion? No, we didn't think that. Did we think they were going to beat Nebraska 62-3? No. So everything is unpredictable. You never know what could happen. But, you know, those are some things I think about. I gave Ohio State the edge at quarterback. I think a slight edge at running back, you know, and on down through. Obviously, Michigan edge at wide receiver and tight end. I said the offensive line was even. I think defensive line, maybe slight edge for Michigan. Linebackers, Michigan. And then both secondary units, as hard as it is to say this, with Jordan Lewis on the other side, I gave both those edges to Ohio State. Returns, Michigan, because Ohio State really hasn't had any kind of amazing return. Paris Campbell had 1 good kick return, and that was it. Kick specialist, Ohio State. Coaching, Ohio State. You know, and that's probably a slight edge, but it's Ohio State. So, I don't know. That's kind of my breakdown on it. I think that we're looking at a very even game if Michigan gets good quarterback play, and that's the big if right now.
You went in depth there, my man. I like it. Isaiah Hull, same question for you. Just flip the side. What's the advantage Michigan has in this game, in your opinion?
I actually agreed with most of what Steve said, except for the one place where I definitely didn't agree was the secondary. I think that Michigan has the number 1 pass defense in the entire country. Now I know Ohio State's number 3, so that's kind of splitting hairs, but Michigan, it's not just Jordan Lewis. It's a lockdown unit pretty much, you know, left to right. Channing Stribling, although he had his worst game against Indiana, has been almost just as stellar as Jordan Lewis. When you look at the Pro Football Focus rankings, that they have been the top tandem all year long. They've just been so stellar at just basically being in the hip of any wide receiver they've faced. So to that note, I do think that that's probably Michigan's biggest advantage going into the game is their pass defense, not counting out the safeties, Delano Hill and DeMonte Thomas, who have actually played quite well from the season as well. They've had a couple lapses here and there, but it's really pretty much been shored up.
Can I ask just one question?
Absolutely.
What's the best passing offense that Michigan has faced? I just ask that humbly because I have not delved into it. I know Ohio State played Oklahoma. Who has Michigan shut down that is a top 25 passing offense?
Offhand, I don't have the numbers. I'd say that
Colorado.
Probably Colorado is what I was going to say. But they did have lapses at the very beginning of the game, and then locked them down after the first quarter.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to get some common ground on that because
that's actually kind of what I was getting at too with DeMonte Thomas and Delano Hill, because they were the ones who were attacked there in that first quarter. Also, it should be noted in that game that Jordan Lewis did not play either.
Yep.
So
remember that.
Colorado's quarterback was knocked out of that game eventually, though, right? Wasn't Colorado's quarterback knocked out of that game eventually?
He was in the mid-third quarter, and that actually had to do with the defensive line. Chris Wormley was in his grill every single play. I'm on the sidelines for games, and literally every single play he was getting hit. Whether it be by Wormley or by Maurice Hurst. So that's the other thing where I think Michigan's got a pretty good advantage on the defensive line. I don't think a lot of people talk about how they have two full rotations, that their second rotation would be a number one rotation in most of FBS football. That's a really, really deep unit, and they stay fresh. That's another place where Michigan really has an opportunity to really take it to the next level if they're going to against Ohio State. I know that sometimes Ohio State's had some offensive line problems here and there, just like Michigan has. And if they can get into the backfield and force J.T. Barrett to make mistakes, that's what really could change the complexion of the game. Will it happen? Not sure, but that's another place where I could really see an opportunity for Michigan.
Yeah, that's one thing both these teams have in common. Defensive line, starting defensive line, stellar. Backup defensive line, also stellar. You mentioned, Isaiah, Michigan's backup defensive line would be a starting defensive line for the majority of teams across the country. Same deal for Ohio State. They have Nick Bosa as a backup. They have Robert Landers as a backup. They have Jalen Holmes as a backup. Those three guys have been maybe three of their best defensive linemen, including the starters. So that's one thing these teams have in common is good and deep defensive lines. Steve Lorenz, recruiting implications. Just go through the recruiting implications of this game. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are recruiting some of the same guys, not just for 2017 but beyond. Just what do you see as far as the recruiting implications of this game? Because if Harbaugh wins, he can say, look, we've now caught Ohio State. We're on an upward trajectory. If Ohio State wins, Urban can say, listen, they're still below us. They're not going to catch us. Just what's your take as far as recruiting implications?
I don't want to say minimal because it always matters to an extent, but I mean, I think if Michigan was to win this game, it's not going to stop Urban Meyer from doing what they've been doing already in 17 and probably what they're going to do in 18 as well. You know, with Michigan, I think a lot of it comes down to still sort of, I don't want to say they have it in their back pocket that they can still claim that he's building a program with his guys, just because they've raised the stakes so quickly. But, Michigan's probably going to put 9 or 10 guys in the NFL draft next year, 2 10-win seasons in a row at least. That's if they lose out the rest of their games. I think they're in a good position to finish in 17, build a foundation for 18. You look at, because what Michigan did, especially in regards to recruiting against Ohio State, was I think they tried to make the 18 class in Ohio a priority a little bit earlier than normal, in the idea that they, even as long as Harbaugh's been there, I think the 17 class was a lost cause in Ohio. So they went after the sophomore, juniors at the time, 18 kids. But even then, it's still an uphill battle with guys like Jackson Carman and Jalen Gill and those guys who I all think will all go to Ohio State at some point. So for me, I think it's one of those things where it can be a program defining win for Michigan, I guess, on the recruiting trail. But I don't think it's going to slow either of these two programs, their coaching staffs down with kids who, I mean, Meyer's got it all made. I mean, he's won national championships. What they did in the NFL draft last year is just as valuable to him on the recruiting trail now as winning those championships. Harbaugh's produced tons of NFL talent. He's coached in the NFL. He's coached at the highest level in the NFL, and he's winning games now too. So, I mean, I think it's a situation where Michigan, Ohio State are probably two of the 3 or 4 best programs, maybe as far as going forward, because of what type of coaches they have, what those coaches can pitch, and how well they've been doing it for so long. So maybe the difference would be for Michigan is to take that next step and try to win a championship. Again, that's going to be an uphill battle, whether or not they win on Saturday or not. But that's kind of the final step for Harbaugh. That's the one thing Meyer has that Harbaugh doesn't, I think, obviously, are the rings. And rings draw in 5 stars left and right. You guys are seeing in the 17 class. So, for me, that's probably what it is. I guess a little more stakes for Michigan as far as they can, kind of pitch it as a program-defining win, an early one under Harbaugh. But again, if Michigan is to win, it's not going to change what Ohio State's doing right now. I mean, they're doing amazing work.
All right, brass tacks, gentlemen. Let's go around the table and get predictions on this game. Final score, how it's going to play out. Steve Helwagen, we will start with you. Give me your final score and how you think the big game's going to play out.
But I think when you got 2 of the top 5 defenses in the country, you don't expect that there's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks, probably a lot of convert 1/3 down and punt type situations, and maybe somebody will break a big play or something will happen in special teams that will change this. I think that Ohio State has the advantage at quarterback, as I led on earlier, and I think that you can't understate that. And we've seen Ohio State's way to beat people is for him to run the ball, and when no one thinks it's coming, I guess. I don't know. It's a phenomenon that escapes me at times, what he's able to do running the ball, and he did not run the ball well against Penn State, and that is coincidentally the one game they lost. So, although there were extenuating factors there with a couple of block kicks and whatever, but they'll have attention to detail this week, that's for sure. And I think that we're looking at a very close game through 3 quarters. Ohio State maybe has one prolonged drive in the 4th quarter to put it away. 27-17 is my pick.
Isaiah Hull, give me your prediction on this game and how it's going to play out, please.
Well, I definitely think it is going to be something of a defensive battle. When you have 2 teams that have not played defenses as good as the ones that they're going to be seeing on Saturday, obviously they both saw Wisconsin, which also has a very good defense, but not on the par of Michigan or Ohio State. I think you're going to see some surprises on both sides of the ball. I think Michigan's going to definitely try to sell out to stop both J.T. Barrett on the ground and Curtis Samuel. I think you're going to see a lot of different packages offensively from both, especially with what I've seen from Ohio State, kind of going with some bread and butter type option plays. I think that they'll change it up to keep Michigan off guard. I think Michigan's going to throw the kitchen sink at them offensively. I think the big difference is going to come into is John O'Korn or Wilton Speight going to be the guy through the entire game? And to me, that's going to be the difference maker. Whether one team can win, and it being Michigan, or if they lose to Ohio State. I think if it's Wilton Speight and he's 80% or above and able to actually be protected by the offensive line against a very, very, very good defensive line, I think Michigan comes away with a slight victory, 17-14. But if he's not at that 80% mark, I think that I don't think Michigan has the opportunity to attack that really phenomenal pass defense that Ohio State has, and I would go 14 Ohio State to Michigan 10.
Steve Lorenz, what's your prediction on how this one will play out and the final score?
Sure. So at the beginning of the year, I had Ohio State winning this game. Really, going into September, October, the thing for me I wanted to see out of Michigan was could they win a big road game. I don't think we can really consider Michigan State a big road win at this point. As nice as it was for them to get the monkey off their back, I don't really think you can look at that and say that was like a marquee road win. And then they go into Iowa City and kind of lay an egg also, and they've struggled. This group of kids, this group of seniors, they've continuously kind of struggled on the road, whether it be at Minnesota last year or at Rutgers 2 years ago under Hoke. These are their games that when they get on the road, they always seem to, play a little bit differently. Things look a little bit differently. So I think that's going to be the big question for them is can they kind of overcome their road demons? For me, I think the uncertainty at quarterback of Michigan combined with kind of what a combination of what both the other guys said, the combination of quarterback of what's going to happen with Michigan and then what Ohio State has in JT Barrett. I think it's going to be the slight difference in the game. Barrett is just so unbelievable at just knowing when to pull the ball out or let it go. I think Michigan will do a really good job in stopping Ohio State running the ball at the middle. That's really what's killed them the last 3 or 4 years, whether it was Zeke or whether it was Beanie Wells or Hyde. They were able to gash Michigan up the middle at will, the last 4 or 5 years. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case this year. I think Michigan finally has the front seven to slow that part of the Buckeye offense down. It's just a matter of I don't necessarily think Michigan's offense is going to do enough to answer. So I have 23-17 Ohio State. I think Barrett gets it done in the end. It's, at home. The crowd's going to be going nuts. I just don't think Michigan has the answer at quarterback for this year. So I'm sticking to what I said at the beginning of the year. I would say this though. There are a lot of seniors for Michigan. This is their legacy on Saturday. A little bit different for Ohio State with having a lot of younger players, so much talent, like always, a lot of younger players. This is a senior-laden Michigan team, tons of kids from Ohio. They've never beaten the Buckeyes. This is like a do or die for them, I think, in a lot of ways. So I expect them to play really well. I'm just not sure it's going to be enough. So I have Ohio State 23, Michigan 17.
I have a similar score. I have Ohio State 28-20, but I think if you're a Buckeye fan, you need to be worried about this game. I know that the point spread is 6. That means on a neutral field, Vegas thinks this is about, like a 3-point game. So these teams are very evenly matched. As Steve Lorenz mentioned, Michigan, one of the most veteran senior-laden teams in the country, Ohio State, the smallest senior class Urban Meyer's ever coached, the smallest senior class in the modern era of Ohio State football. So that will be an interesting dynamic there. Gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Steve Lorenz and Isaiah Hull from Wolverine 24/7. Steve Helwagen from here at Bucknuts. Really appreciate it, fellas. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Also, thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.